So Bataan has come and gone. I was a finisher. We're going to start unpacking what I have going on here, and we'll kind of talk about how some of this stuff played out during the event. But the very short version is was able to finish, did not make the goal time of 8 hours or less. That was wildly optimistic, and that there were a bunch of changes to the course this year. So this was my first time at Bataan, and it was really intended to be just kind of a one and done. But about 2 weeks before this race, they had made a change to the course. So traditionally there was a hill called Mineral Hill that is apparently a legendary part of this course, and then eventually dropped into a sand pit. Due to needs of the Army, they had to change that this year. So no Mineral Hill, but 2 laps now that took you through the sand pit twice. Haven't done it before to compare, but other people commenting on like Facebook and Reddit who have done it say that this was actually harder, that the course overall was sandier, and that the 2 trips through the sand pit made it overall worse. So picked a good year to try it, I suppose. All right, so we have arrived at the White Sands Missile Range for the Bataan Death March, was just going to kick off in the morning. Just finished dinner, all you can eat pasta. As you can see, there's a growing tent city behind me, and we got a beautiful view of the mountains right here. We're actually at a pretty cool little PT field around in here. So everything is packed. We are ready to go. It's been 9 months of training. We're ready to wake up in the morning and get after it.
Okay, are you ready?
Woo!
Begin!
There we go. So the accommodations, that right there was my hotel for the night. So they tell you in advance that if you're looking to get on to post, there's only 2 gates there, and there are thousands of people coming in. You could be in line for a couple hours and then fighting for parking. Wanted to just sidestep all that. Got there the night before, found a campground that they had for free, and just parked it in the back. Hadn't really tried that before. You did the camp pad, a couple poncho liners. I mean, it wasn't cold, but Super Forester, not ideal. But we made it work. Not how I'd normally spend a Friday night, but this'll do. Right. Yeti roadie cooler, this road shotgun, the drive there and back. Worked out fine. It does what Yeti cooler stuff does. Do like the removable tray. That has been very, very nice, and kept everything nice and cold for hot New Mexico as it's starting to get into the 80s. Next up, also riding shotgun, was the GR2 26 liter. This was the support bag, the change of clothes, other food items, everything that wasn't packed up in the ruck that I was going to need for the night when I first got there, and also on that return trip. I think that I do like the GR2 26. There will be more to come, focus more on this, but for a car-based road trip, the kit bag would probably have been a better way to go. Just that single cavity, just pull stuff in and out. So next is going to be clothing that was worn for the event. So we got ourselves some Mizuno Wave Mujin 10s. These are trail runners, and you can see the Vibram soles. Definitely a fan of this bar. They've been very, very durable. Got over 100 miles on them through the course of training and including this event. and the soles have held up beautifully. We still have a lot of those goat heads that are still embedded in there. This White Sands is overrun with them. Not very flip-flop friendly. Ask me how I know. But these I think were a pretty good choice. I overall still suffer a lot from heavy blistering. I don't know what it has been this year. I've gone through boots and trail shoes, two different kinds, two different sizes. Gone through darn tough socks, socks with liners, socks without liners, the Injinji ones, the tape, Leuco tape, you name it, and I'm still getting tore up. So hard to say whether it's my feet at this point versus the actual shoe, but this was the best solution. Wasn't perfect, still got tore up, but I do actually like the Mizuno's quite a bit. So I don't know if it's a fit issue, a meat issue. Generally anything past about mile 10, I start getting tore up no matter what is on my feet. But these are probably the least armored looking of the trail shoes compared to something like a Brooks Cascadia. And these held up just fine. There is not a single stitch out of place with this. I'm putting through some pretty rough stuff, so we just got to get the goat heads unstuck. So on the sock front, went with the darn tough over the calf boot socks. These are the 33005 model, and then I don't know how long I have had these. This is what I used to wear in the Army, the silk polypropylene sock liners. Which worked really well with the wool boot sock of the day and my old jungle boots. And wish I could say that they had the same kind of performance now. I don't know, it might just be me thing, but now I'm just getting tore up whether I have these or don't have these. I will say moisture wicking wise, the sock liner was beneficial on that front. So maybe it kept things from getting as worse as it could be, but without showing you nasty foot pictures, I'm pretty tore up today. So this was the setup that I employed with some Leuco tape on my known hot spots, which still didn't save me. Right. As far as event day underwear, these were Reebok. These are just 9-inch compression briefs. The longer length I find is helpful, especially if you have any kind of quad, so that this doesn't ride up and cause no end of grief. I got a pair of Reebok ones, a pair of Under Armour ones. They both do the same job. I greatly prefer this for rucking, and especially controlling the shaping on the inner thighs. Pants, the Go Ruck Challenge pants. This is the lightweight, tough dry material. These have had not only Bataan, all the train up mileage on it, but also the light, the tough, I don't think I did the city ruck of these, but several Go Ruck events on them at this point. Traveled with them. These are great. They pack small. They dry very, very fast. They are extremely tough. Still, even with all the puncture marks and all that stuff from the last basic, there's no holes. Like, this thing holds up really, really good. Lifetime warranty. No issue at all with the pants. Fantastic. So as far as top layers, went with the Columbia Fishing Gear Sun Hoodie. I think this is like a 30 SPF sun hoodie. And since I live in a desert and this event was in a desert, pretty familiar with this. I kind of like, as opposed to the wide brim boonie style hat, just doing regular ball cap with the hood over you. I find that gives you enough good coverage without the brim of that hat kind of bouncing on the ruck or the wind taking it off your head. If this hood blows off, you just put it back on. This was a nice lightweight option to still have a lot of sun protection. I think the hood really gets a lot of the ears and the back of the neck, which you can still miss in a lot of spots. Hat then, no surprise, the Challenge tack hat, or just regular tack hat. Yeah, the tough dry material, it's great. It holds up very well. It dries very, very fast. No complaints, it does hat stuff. Okay, sunglasses choice. So with the possibility of high wind gusts and dust and all that stuff out there, went with, this is made by Fuse Lenses. This is their own sunglass frame. This is called the Torch, which is in their amp dark carbon, which I found gave me enough full coverage right here, but was not super close to my face where I ran into fog. I didn't have any fogging issues in there. So I kept everything out. The lens tech they have in there was pretty nice. No complaints on that. Pretty good eye protection. This is a older 511 TDU belt, pants belt. Plastic little buckle. nothing fancy, but also very easy to wash, which will be handy today. So where I attached my bib was the 511 Skyweight. This is their survival chest rig, and I think it's still got my crap in there. In there, I had my buff, which I kind of wore around my neck for extra sun protection, as well as pulling it up as needed for gusts of wind or vehicles going by, tossing clouds of dust at you. So that was good. I had a clutch battery for my phone, which I didn't end up needing because the iPhone battery lasted very, very well. This is magnetic and will attach to the MagSafe side of things, and has a built-in little cable there just to give you some use on the go in an emergency. Some Squatch lip balm was in there. Very handy in the desert. This is also where I kept my electrolyte tabs. These are made by Salt Stick. And that is these guys. So popping one of these every like 15 to 30 minutes worked pretty well. Apparently this got soaked in the cooler. Didn't realize it, so these are trash now. And here I had, why yes kids, wired earbuds, because I am an old man that yells at clouds and things like that. I wanted my headphones to not have to have independent charging or any of this stuff. Plug it right into the phone. And the Bose Sport ones, they stay in place really, really well. Very, very comfortable. I mean, I had these for 9 hours in here, and I don't think I would be that comfortable with other traditional in-the-ear headphones. Thanks, buddy. So these, very, very good. Had these a long time. Last thing, sunglass cleaning cloth. And yeah, that makes a nice little spot to mount your bib with the chip on it. So very convenient to have access to your snacks and your tech and whatever you need on the go. I've been very, very happy with this setup, the chest pouch, as opposed to the also very popular fanny pack option. So this is the Rucker 4.0 25 liter. This was bought specifically with this event in mind. This has not been unpacked since I finished this thing. So at the end, when they check your ruck and they weigh it, I was completely out of supplies, out of water by that point. So it is 38.5 pounds, completely dry. So a little bit more than the 35-pound requirement. I think that the scales there were slightly more generous than mine was, because I had it dialed into like 36.3, which is fine. So the total loadout that I was running with was about 44 pounds for the majority of it, with a full water bladder. So inside the Ruck, this is a GR1 fuel pocket. And in it we had the Luco tape for the hot spots before and also during the race. I had a pre-planned sock change at mile 14, where I swapped them out and taped up anything that was getting out of control. Dude wipes, handy, face, hands, everywhere else. For the tape portion here, some scissors. And then for any other odds and ends getting goat heads out of you, a little Leatherman Micra, had that for years. Got some body powder, foot, other locations as you need. Same thing with the body glide. Works really well around the belt line, because I was relying pretty heavily on that hip belt. Sunscreen, of course, out in an environment like this, and that is the fuel pocket. And the small little dry bag, this is the 4-liter Sea to Summit dry bag. And, oh, some Uncrustables, also planned for at mile 14. The hazelnut ones will give you all the boost to your little spirit that you might need. Sweat general purpose rag, didn't end up using this on the course. Had some mechanics gloves, which I used for events, not knowing how cold the morning was going to be exactly. I had those on standby. These were also not used. Inside there, but was thrown all helter-skelter in the chaos, was my secondary set of socks and sock liners. Still has some of the old tape attached to it. Let's get that out. In the front mesh pocket, I had a spare hydration bladder. This is my older Source one. I'm moving away from the Source bladders. This one will hold the vast majority of my water. However, at this attachment point, It's not necessarily the hose itself, because it will start a leak. It's where it actually attaches in here. You put pressure on just the right perfect way, it will slowly leak. Not enough to like be like, man, I'm completely out of water. It'll dump everything, but it will dump a noticeable amount on you. And this is actually the third one I think that I've been through. Still running into leaking issues with them. So probably just gonna junk it now that I really don't need a spare at this point. Instead of the source bladder, I went with the Camelback. This is from their military tactical line. This is their 3-liter short, which worked out perfectly. So no leaks. The tube is much longer than the source. So did have to get stuff back in there, but I think that the valve easier to operate, as is the cap. This can be actually kind of a downside. I think for events that are gonna have more PT in them, this is gonna pop open and get dragged into the dirt. But for just straight up rucking, this did everything that I wanted. I did add a little bit of 550 cord here so that I could attach my Night Eyes carabiner to attach and then suspend on the inside of the ruck. Everything else though has worked as it should on this one. And of course, the 30-pound ruck plate in there. So that plate plus this bag is about like 34 pounds and some change, so it's really not too difficult to make that 35-pound minimum. I did swap out these zipper pulls for the Maxpedition tactical zipper pulls, I guess you want to call them. They come in a couple sizes. These are actually the small ones. The large ones are freaking huge. But just 2 of those bad boys on there just so you can get that 1-finger positive grip. So for packet dump it games, learn that lesson at Tombstone. This makes life a little bit easier and a little bit faster. This is the newer style hip belt compared to the much kind of thinner overall hip belt that they used to make. That worked out pretty well. This is a very long ruck. This is 20 inches tall. My torso is about 17.5, which is technically, this is too much bag for my frame. However, because of where they put the molly and the attachment point for that hip belt, this height is actually perfect to have the hip belt at my hips the way that it should. So I don't have to drop the ruck to get there. I can just kind of have that from the get-go. It does mean that for me, I am pretty much hip belt dependent because of the length of this thing. Without that hip belt, this is gonna just swish and just drive that sacral area nuts. But because this was gonna be a long distance event, was pretty much planning on relying on that for the duration. So this held up fine. This was a very good bag. Probably gonna do something more in-depth and more detail on that later. So that was the gear side of the house. As far as training goes, I started 9 months before the event. I had thought about this the year prior. Logistically, it just didn't work out. So when I knew that, all right, I was gonna make this the plan for this year, I started early. I started way too early. So 9 months, I mean, this isn't like Go Ruck selection or anything, right? This is just, you know, it's a marathon, it's straight line rucking. The problem with going maybe that far out is it just becomes such a grind, and trying to dedicate the time and the mileage to the rucking while you still have to, you know, balance a job and family obligations and things like this. It does become kind of a grind physically and mentally. So to do it again, I definitely wouldn't have started that far out, maybe like 4 or 5 months to really hit it. I first started out with doing like 4 days a week, like full body kettlebell strength training, 1 day of yoga, and then a long ruck at some point over the weekend. So 6 out of 7 days working it. Stuck with that for a while up till about November into that Tombstone event time frame. And while I was able to, you know, do all of that successfully and I felt pretty prepared, I was definitely feeling like overall pretty beat down. I found more information from a guy that posts on Reddit under like TF Voodoo, and I believe that's also his website. former special forces guy, sells programming for rucking, and he was more of a advocate for performance in rucking, doing 2 but real short high intensity sessions per week. So say something approximately 5 miles, and then the variables being either your speed or your weight to get that intensity. Buddy, come on. So I started to work that in. Would do the strength training maybe like 3 days a week, and then trying to hit Wednesdays as a midweek ruck, and then weekend as the other one. That ideally probably would have worked out, but also very difficult to sustain when you've got a somewhat physical job to begin with, life, and not exactly 20 anymore either. So when I could, I was trying to pull that off. I did see some better, I think, overall tolerance. I did see some performance gains doing it that way, so that seemed to be legit information. I used Chumamok Hill, which is kind of a local little legendary hill in Tucson. It's like 1,400 foot elevation gain across like 3 miles. It's 1.5 miles up and down. Started to do that for intervals, hitting the switchback part and just doing repeats until it turned into full-on laps up and down with a 45-pound plate, so going 15 pounds heavier than my event day. That worked fantastic for the cardio and conditioning part, like across the whole thing. For Bataan, I wasn't like breathing hard, like the pulmonary function was great. It was like quad endurance. That's what got me. My quads, probably about mile 14 and beyond, they started to be in just like a half cramped from mile 14 till the end. They never fully cramped, but they never fully relaxed. They just kind of hung on for dear life. So that would be the vastus medialis in particular. It's isolated to a specific muscle. That thing just would not let go. So that will be something I think for future rucking. I will look to see how I can tailor my workout plan to get more endurance for just that particular area. Everything else held up pretty good other than the condition of my feet. So what I ultimately ended up settling on in the last phase of my training was I got a program by Jeff Newport, his The Giant program. It's just one exercise. It's a double kettlebell clean and press, where 25 minutes of that, based off of a 10 rep max, kind of a fluctuating volume cycle, I think did the most amount of kind of conditioning in the shortest amount of time. I was hitting most muscle groups doing one thing, and I could bang it out really relatively easily, but much more consistently. And then that allowed time for playing around with my rucks. I did do one 20-miler around my neighborhood 2.5 weeks before this event. And that was just sort of all right, let's find out where you're at. And I felt pretty good. The only thing that was still kind of getting me was the feet and the conditioning of them. So I got lots of really good, decent hot spots. So I laid off the rucking for 2.5 weeks prior to Bataan to allow myself to heal. Figured, all right, well, we'll add the sock liners, we'll add more leukotape to those known spots, should be good. Still wasn't, so that is an ongoing issue for me to solve. I can't speak to as to why. But at the end of the day, we did cross that finish line, and we came home with this little guy. So my initial goal when I set out was I would love to not only just finish this event, but I would love to do it in 8 hours or less. I felt like to me that was going to be a very, very good performance metric to hit based on my age, my conditioning level, what my training would allow. Did not take into account the terrain. It looked like from my research and what I could see online that it was maybe 50% pavement, 50% kind of off-road. Not even close. It was a very sandy course overall. Dropping into the sand pit, it was just slightly deeper. So we ended up hitting that twice. And around that 19 to 22 mile mark is where a lot of people are posting online is that really quit. Jasper, come on, buddy, leave it alone. Leave it alone. So the variables of the sand could not be underestimated. Elevation, pretty minimal, just short little hills, nothing big there. But the mental component was also a large part of it. And about mile 24, as you're heading in a straight line, you can see right off to your left, separated by a fence and some grass, there's the finish line. So kind of psychologically, you assume I am almost there. This is going to be great, guys. I can see the finish line. And then it's getting farther away as you're going, And you're kind of wondering now where does this end? And then it keeps going. It keeps going. You see a loop. Other people coming the other way. That turn must be coming, right? Nope. You're just passing more of them, and keep going. Psychologically, that was definitely the soul crusher. You're just expecting this turn to be here. You're almost done, and you're not. You still have a long way to go. Even at the signpost that said, mile 26, that last quarter mile was a killer. So definitely underestimated as far as the mental component to this particular challenge. So that will be a good lesson going forward. I definitely understand much better now competitive athletes who talk about mindset and motivation and that mental toughness, because that definitely played a role. Boy, you start getting to seeing your spirit animal, and it's very easy to have something just throw you emotionally right into the dumps, and then you're just doing one of these, feeling sorry for yourself, and it takes something to kind of just slap it out of you. Now for Bataan, that is usually the images that they have posted of the actual survivors of this event. And so when you're kind of feeling sorry for yourself and I'm down into the dumps, you take a look at that sign and just try to imagine as much as you can what some of these folks had to go through for real. It's like, nope, you kind of pick your head up a little bit and you start stepping it out. Like, this is not a bad day. Let's just keep going. So it is a very rewarding event. It was a much more challenging event than I gave it credit for. I'm very happy that I did it. For me, this was just kind of like a once in a lifetime thing. I don't have any plans to do this to myself again, but very glad that I was able to experience that with about 6,000 of my closest friends. Plus, got to meet the cowbell man, and if you know, you know.
Woo! The cowbell man. Woo! Thanks, boss.
Good, man. Good.